afternoon. I want to call this work session of the Durham City Council to order at 1 o'clock on May the 7th of 2020, and want to welcome everyone who is listening to this extraordinary session of our Durham City Council. And I want to, as always, thank our tech staff, all the folks that have helped to make this possible in technology solutions and public affairs. We're just very grateful for you. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Good afternoon, everyone. Mayor Schewel.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Here.
Councilmember Caballero.
Here.
Councilmember Freeman.
Present.
Councilmember Middleton.
Here.
Councilmember East.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'll now ask if there are announcements by members of the council. I think I saw Councilmember Freeman's hand and Councilmember Middleton. Go ahead, Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you. I just wanted to share that in these extraordinary times, it's been a pleasure to serve on a number of panels and discussions around the issues we're facing in our community. And I really just wanted to share that I'm leaving a call from Episcopalians United Against Racism on decolonizing wealth and acknowledging the parity of all that's going on in our COVID-19 crisis with how Edgar Villanueva spells out what decolonizing wealth will look like. And just noting that there's in addition to that fund that I've been talking about at these council meetings, there's a lot of uncertainty in how we'll move forward. And I wanted to put folks at ease in noting that we are in this together and we will get through it. It's not going to happen without each of us making the sacrifices and stepping up to do what's necessary. So, and then along those lines, I also wanted to thank Durham Cares for pulling together a policy panel around COVID-19 to share out some responses from a variety of community members. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon to you and good afternoon to my colleagues and to all that are watching. Mr. Mayor, this afternoon, I want to raise my voice in solidarity with the family of Ahmaud Arbery of Brunswick, Georgia. Our hearts were rended as a nation as we watched a public lynching of a young Black man doing something that we said in our order was okay to do. That was to get some exercise during this COVID-19 pandemic. We are all pretty well rehearsed on how the disparities on how this pandemic is affecting Black and brown people, people of color, poor people, and the disparities in the numbers, be it death, be it economic impact, be it emotional impact. A lot of the frontline workers, people that have to go to work during this time are people of color, Black and brown people. And then in the midst of this, to have to deal with this horrific attack on our conscience as a nation just sickens us. Oftentimes, it feels like you're a tennis ball caught in this perpetual volley between rage and fear. And whether you are wearing a jogging suit or whether you're wearing a suit with a bow tie, whether you have a title behind your name or not, it is just there's no refuge for us, and none of us that are privileged or think we hold powerful positions are immune from this. So on today, I want to send regards to our elected colleagues in Glenn County and ask that they would just hold the line and wherever the facts take them in this investigation, folk need to be held accountable, that they would do that. I want to send a shout out to my fraternity brother, who's the mayor of Brunswick, Georgia, Cornell Harvey, as his city now gets the attention from our nation, that he would be strengthened in leading that city through these times. And again, I want that name to be on our record in perpetuity, the name Ahmaud Arbery, just another name added to this long list, this sad list of folk who were just living, who was jogging, who was doing something that we said was okay to do during this pandemic, and that's to be out and get some exercise. May God bless and comfort his family. I'm praying for Brunswick, Georgia and Glenn County. May God bless and protect our city. Black Lives Matter. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much for those remarks, Council Member. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to thank Councilmember Middleton for bringing that up. It's been a real struggle the last couple of days, knowing that this has happened again, that another Black person, another Black man has lost their life to violence, to vigilante violence. And so thank you for bringing that into the room. I wanted to also bring up a press conference that I was on yesterday with the public advocate of the city of New York, who has, as I have, along with him and several dozen other elected officials, signed a letter asking the Department of Justice to investigate the COVID response throughout the country in light of the racial disparities that we've seen in infections and deaths, disproportionately affecting people of color, primarily Black folks, Native Americans, and Latinos across the United States. And so we've called for a Department of Justice investigation of that. We know that here in North Carolina, those disparities exist. They exist all over the country. And it's very important for us to think about why those are happening and to change our policy so that we don't see this kind of disparity moving forward. I'm happy to share more with my colleagues about that, but I hope that y'all will support. And there's, I think there's an open letter for sign on that I'll send out.
Thank you. Thank you for those remarks, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. Are there other announcements? Councilmember Freeman.
Yes, thank you. I also wanted to thank Councilmember Middleton for raising Ahmaud Arbery. I'm just catching on. Haven't been on social media and just hearing about it, but I do want to raise the consciousness of how we respond in our community, and acknowledging that in addition to what has happened to Ahmaud Arbery, that the Durham Committee on the Affairs of Black People has also raised an issue here in Durham, and I'm unfortunately disappointed in how it's being addressed. And I would hope that we would all consider our role as the fact that race is a protected factor for people who are advantaged as white. And so just noting that, I hope to have some response to that letter in the coming days, but I am just noting that there is definitely an ongoing and heartbreaking reality in addressing issues of racism in this country and right here in Durham that I've yet to figure out how to wrap my arms around, but I am consistently pushing in that, realizing that we have to do this together, and we have to find ways to meet each other and move past what has happened in the past to a better future. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. Madam Mayor Pro Tem.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Freeman, have we received a letter from the committee?
Yes, we were CC'd on the letter.
What letter are you talking about?
So it's I can forward it to you. We were CC'd along with the county.
Is it a letter to us though that we need to respond to? Because I don't know that I know what letter you mean.
Yes, I'll forward it along.
Okay.
Thank you. Are there any other comments, announcements? I do have one announcement, and I'm going to begin with an apology to you all. I realized that I didn't give you all a heads up on our chairs of our Renewal and Recovery Task Force, and I apologize. I always, as you know, I really try to keep everybody as informed as I can, but I just blew it, and so I just want to say that. We have the two chairs of our Recovery and Renewal Task Force, as you all know, were announced yesterday, and I'm very happy about them. The first is Katie Galbraith, who is the president of Duke Regional Hospital, and the second is Matisha Sims. Matisha is vice president of Blue Cross and Blue Shield and controller of Blue Cross and Blue Shield. A lot of us know Katie from various civic activities, and a lot of us know Matisha, especially those of us who have served on the Audit Services Committee. She now chairs that committee of the city, has been on our committee for a long time. So I apologize for not giving you all a heads up on those names, but I'm very excited about those. All right, now we're going to move to, once I get my iPad ready here, we're going to move to our budget and management. So we're going to move to our departmental items, and we'll begin with our budget and management services
Excuse me, Mr.
department.
Mayor. Could we
Yes, sir,
do
Tom.
priority items from the
I'm
city manager?
sorry. Yes, my apologies. I apologize, Tom. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, priority items by the city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon, Mayor, members of council. I have two priority items this afternoon. One is listed in the agenda memo, which is item number 2, the Raleigh-Durham Airport Authority acceptance of a Federal Aviation Administration grant. The Airport Authority has asked that the City Council consider suspending the rules and voting on the approval of the acceptance of that grant today. As you know, any of those FAA grants, which we've done many, many times, have to be accepted by the 4 owners of the airport, and before the Airport Authority is allowed to accept them. Obviously, it's a substantial amount of money that came through the some of the CARES legislation to assist the airport and many of their revenue shortfalls. So it's very important that that process move along and not wait for the council meeting. So hopefully you will consider that. Secondly, an item that's not on the agenda, Mr. Mayor, I talked to you about it yesterday. At the end of the work session today, I would request a few minutes to talk with the council about future council meetings and the need for some additional council meetings in June in particular to handle a mounting number of land use related public hearing items. So I'll wait and talk about that whenever you feel it's appropriate, Mr. Mayor, but probably at the end of the meeting will be fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. And can I have a motion to approve the manager's priority items?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the manager's priority items. I'm going to ask everyone in favor to please raise your hand in a way that the clerk can see it. Madam Clerk, are we good?
Yes, we are. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The motion passes unanimously. And now we'll move to the city attorney.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council. The City Attorney's Office has no priority items today.
Thank you, Madam Attorney. And Madam Clerk. Madam Clerk, you're muted.
Excuse me. The City Clerk's Office has no priority items today.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Now we will move to the departmental items. First, Budget and Management Services Department. Item 1, FY 2021 Budget Development Guidelines. I'm going to pull this item. Under the City Manager's Office, Item 2, Raleigh-Durham Airport Authority, Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, CARES, grant offer. And this is an item that the manager has asked us to go ahead and suspend the rules and vote on today. I'll ask first if there are any questions or any issues that anyone wants to raise before we take action on this. All right, then I'll ask for a motion to suspend the rules and vote.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we suspend the rules and vote. And again, I'll ask all in favor to please raise your hand in a way that the clerk can see it. How are we, Madam Clerk?
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. The ayes have it. The motion passes unanimously. And now I'll accept a motion to approve the acceptance of this grant.
Move to accept.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we accept the grant. All in favor, please raise your hand in a way that the clerk can also identify clearly.
Yes, I have it. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The ayes have it. The motion passes unanimously. Under Department of Community Development, Item 3, Affordable Housing Loan Portfolio Servicing. Also would like to pull this item. Item 4, under Department of Transportation, Municipal Agreement for East Club Boulevard Sidewalk Spot Safety Funds. Item 5, under Department of Water Management, Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition, SCADA On-Call Services Contract. Item 6, South Durham Water Reclamation Facility Administration Building Renovations award of professional architectural services contract to DTW Architects and Planners Limited.
I'd like to pull that item, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. Item 7 under General Services, proposed advance acquisition for the future expansion of Lake Michie, property of Russell Ellis Estate, parcel 192276. I just will say awesome. Still my favorite city program in history. Congratulations to Water Management for this long-term planning. Item 8, City of Durham Employment Training 2018-20 Grant Project Ordinance superseding Project Ordinance number 15305. Item 9, Public Works Department Ordinance recognizing the reference guide for development and establishing a related fee. I just want to say on this item, congratulations to Marielle, to all the people in the departments that worked on this thing. This is a giant multi-departmental project, and I just want to thank you and congratulate you on this. Item 10, contract amendment number 1 for ST 302 street repairs and repaving 2020 project. Great, I would say. Item 11, contract number 1 for ST 300C utility location services. Item 12, contract amendment number 1 for ST 301C paving services 2020.
Mr. Mayor, I wanted to pull that item.
Item 12, thank you.
And 13.
All righty. Item 13 is contract amendment number 1, SW39C for additional construction engineering and inspection for SW39 University Drive Bicycle and Pedestrian Facilities Project. We'll pull that as well. Item 14, utility extension agreement with 919 Storage NC 98 LLC to serve Carthage Industrial.
I'm going to pull that item as well.
All right. Pull item 14. Item 15, street and infrastructure acceptances.
And that item as well.
All right. Under presentations, Budget and Management Services Department, item 16, 2020-21 proposed budget and FY 21-26 capital improvement plan, CIP, to be provided at the upcoming council meeting. Under public hearings, Community Development Department proposed amendments to the FY 2015, 2016, 2016 and 17, 2017, 18, 18, 19, and 19 and 20 annual action plans. I would add that we have heard from the clerk that we have no public comment on any of our items today. So, Mr. Manager, the items that I have are 1, 3, 6, 12, 13, 14, and 15.
I concur.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
just real quick, I didn't want to, if we had been meeting in person, I would have done a couple of, I don't want to pull this item, but I just want to say, so I decided to save them till now.
Sure.
And I'll just say that this agenda today is one of the best examples I can think of the fact that this administration has been relentlessly focused on moving forward with essential city services. The fact that we are in the midst of this epidemic and we're getting the additional spot safety funds to complete the East Club Boulevard Sidewalk project, which is a great project that's been in our plans for a number of years, that's finally going to happen is fantastic. And as you said, the acquisition of land around Lake Michie and the reference guide for development is an incredible achievement. I'll be honest, I didn't get through all 275 pages. Fair warning, full disclosure, but I will say that it's amazing that this kind of work can keep going forward. You know, street paving, just all of the things that make city government work are still happening right now as we speak. I just want to thank the city manager and our staff for that relentless focus on essential services because it really makes a difference. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Reese.
And Mr. Mayor, I could also tie mines together as well, because similarly, I pulled 10, 12, 13, and 14, similarly to say that it's great that we're moving forward, but acknowledging the equity and the aspect of how, if we're not conscious of what happens in the midst of going through the motions, workforce statistics outline and share a lot of information that we might not see. And if we don't request it from those vendors, we don't necessarily know that we're just, handing over, especially when the numbers are in the millions. So I know for at least one or two of those items, I think it was 13 or 12, but one of them, we have to use the opportunity to make sure that we're actually living into our values and acknowledging what racial equity means. And so those items were pulled just to note that I'm not sure what the process was, but I know in one of them, the goal wasn't met because they extended the subcontracting. And I just wanted to note that the relationships that are created when you have people of color on staff can assist in that. And so asking for workforce statistics is still important. And if along those lines, 10, 12, 13, and 14, you can exclude, because that was all I wanted to say. And the only item I really wanted to speak on was 15.
Thank you, Council Member. 10, 12, 13, and 14. Thank you. I want to add, I think I'll just ask our city attorney to make the comment that is in the chat, important comment. Madam Attorney, would you like to add about the work on the reference guide for development?
I would. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to also thank Deputy City Attorney Don O'Toole, who I know has worked very carefully and closely with Mariel Klein and others, at, many in the planning department on the reference public works, on the reference guide for development. It was a labor of love, I think, from everyone. And I know he put a lot of thought and energy into it. And I just wanted him to know I appreciate his efforts.
I am impressed that anyone could think that that editing and fixing up a 275-page reference guide would be a labor of love.
It was.
Attorney, but that's awesome. I guess that's what it takes to work in city government.
Or to be an attorney.
Or be an attorney. Exactly.
You get geeked out about that stuff.
Yeah, thank you.
I could tell by the amount of work that was done that somebody must have loved it, honestly. There was a lot of effort put into that.
Yes,
guide.
it was. Yes,
Tim, I don't know if Don has told you this, but I call him Spock whenever I see him. So,
Cool as a cucumber. Thank you so much for.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Okay. And Councilmember Reese, thank you for the comments on that, and Councilmember Freeman. We'll now move to our first item, which is the budget development guidelines. And I have a question about those, which I sent an email to, and I think David responded to me today, but I didn't have a chance to look at it. I apologize. My question is, well, first of all, thank you for the guidelines. I think they are fully in keeping with what we decided last time. We had a unanimous support for them, and I was glad to see that you had codified them in the guidelines. How much does the 12% fund balance represent, and what is the difference between that and our 8% fund balance?
Good afternoon, Bertha Johnson, Director of Budget and Management Services. David did respond to the email, and I wasn't sure if he was on the call, but the number that he sent to you was 12% at the 24.6 million and 16.7% at the 34.2 million. And that difference was 9.6 million. And I'm not sure if we had the, if David has, if he's on the call, the 8% number.
David Boyd, Finance Director. I don't have that 8% calculation in front of me. That's not actually a number that we really pay much attention to. It's not calculated the same way that we calculate our 12 and 16% numbers, and we've always been well above the 12% number. That's a state guideline that they use, and it's generally an indication of governments that are really struggling to maintain fund balance.
David, can you say again, I know Bertha just said this, can one of you all say again the 12% number?
24.6 million.
And the 16%? 16.7?
34.2. 34.2. Okay.
So roughly a $10 million difference.
Yes.
9.6 million, yes.
9.6. Okay, thank you very much. That's what I want to know. All right, colleagues, any questions or comments? Councilmember Caballero.
Thank you, Mayor. I just had a quick question. The guidelines were great, but on the third page, the second to last bullet, where we discussed the $5 million kind of set aside, if the working towards the 5 million. I just had a clarifying question. If that was mostly what are we anticipating that as mostly relief, or are we anticipating it as a combination of relief and then also having to shore up operational parts for the city to meet, social distancing guides? I'm thinking like retrofitting buildings to be safer, thinking plexiglass and distancing and things like that. So just wanted to know what that 5 million encompasses.
Yes, Councilmember Caballero, it is really all encompassing at this point, because we have not, we don't know many aspects of things, both in terms of what are the pressures for relief and response going to be, as well as we're working through the review of operational requirements as it relates to employee protection, public protection. So I would say at this point, it's likely to be some of both. But we felt we just know we're not going to be in a position of knowing those details when it comes time to adopt the budget. But that's why I felt like it's important that we at least reserve some funds so we know we have a resource when we get those details worked out.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. Are there other questions or comments about these budget guidelines at this point? Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Bertha. Thank you, David. We'll now move to item 3, Affordable Housing Loan Fund Portfolio Servicing. And this was the one I also had some questions about. And welcome, Reginald.
Greetings, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and members of City Council. Reginald Johnson, Director, Department of Community Development.
Reginald, I wanted to just get a little bit more insight into our loan portfolio. As I read this, there are 638 loans that are being serviced. And I wondered if you could, I saw the list in the evaluation attachment of the various kinds of loans that are there. But I had 2 questions. One is to understand kind of what the bulk of these loans are, and also try to understand, I guess, 3 questions. One is, are many of these loans forgivable, or are these loans that we are clearly, some of them we're working actively to collect, which is why we have this agency on board for the portfolio servicing. And then delinquency. I was wondering about our delinquency issues with the loans and how they're handled. Are they handled by this loan portfolio servicing agency? So those are my questions. I can ask them one at a time if that'd be easier.
I think I have them, Mr. Mayor, but if miss one, I'll be glad to, if you chime in. So the loans are loans that we receive payments on. So that's number one. The loan portfolio that AmeriNational services actually is about 384 loans. You asked what's the makeup of those loans. It's valued at about $35 million. 79 of those loans are developer loans. So 79 of the 300 developer loans. But the value of those are about $30.8 million. Of the 384 loans, 305 of those are residential loans. 305 of the 384 are residential loans at a value of $4.1 million. You ask about the delinquency. So of these 384 loans, 64 of them are 30 days or less. But in terms of delinquency, that's the lowest that it's been in a year. And so in terms of a reflection of what's been happening recently, we haven't had that impact our loan portfolio yet. And that is of April the 30th. So today is May the 5th, May the 7th. The report that I just gave you about the 64 loans is as of April the 30th.
Thank you. So a couple of questions. Why did I have the number 638 in my head? I thought I had read where 638 loans, and I'm looking for it. Am I just, yeah, if it,
It's on page 3.
yeah, it's on page 3 of the memo, Reginald, but maybe that's not the number of loans. Maybe I'm,
Well, I don't have it in front of me. And so what I'll do is just let me reconcile that and just I'll send you a community. Actually, my staff is listening. The staff is listening. They just texted me that some of those loans of the 604 are forgivable. So the portion I gave to you are the loans that are where persons are paying.
okay,
So that's where the difference in the number.
got it. And can you give me an example of one of the developer loans? What would be an example of one of those?
One of the developer loans that comes to mind is the hosiery mill. That's one of our long-term loans. I can provide a list to you, but these are loans that typically are multifamily projects that have a range of financing that we've done. We can give you a list.
I would love that list.
Okay.
I feel not very well versed in that, and I would love to just have a list at some point. Not urgent, but thank you for that.
Okay. We'll provide that to you as follow up.
Thank you, colleagues. Any questions? Councilmember Caballero.
Thank you. I just was looking at the workforce statistics for this firm, and I just wanted to say they're very impressive. Some of the better numbers that I've seen in a firm, and just was curious where maybe it is in the memo, I just missed it, but where are they based?
The firm is actually based in California.
Okay.
But they do have offices in the northern part of the country, I think in Minnesota.
Okay.
Also, they've done a great job, and we've been doing business with them since 2004. And they do service other cities around the country in the same way.
I just wanted to highlight that because I thought it was terrific.
Okay. And also, going back to the mayor's question, there are some loans that we have from CASA that are part of the portfolio as well, and DCLT that are considered developer loans.
Thank you. Councilmember Freeman, I believe you had your hand up.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up, just for clarity. The loans that you're talking about that are forgivable, are they forgivable because they're CBDG or home funds, or are they because of some plan or ordinance that was put in place locally?
No, it's a range in terms of the funding source, and it depends upon the deal arrangement that was made when we constructed the deal with the developer. And so some of the loans might be 10 or 15 years old. Definitely some of them predate my coming to the department and most of the staff's coming to the department. But it depends upon the arrangement that we have at the particular time.
Thank you very much, Reginald. Are there any other questions? Okay, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Now we'll move to item 6. And Councilmember Caballero, I believe you pulled this item. No?
No.
Who pulled item 6?
That'd be Mr. Mayor.
Was it me?
It was me, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, okay, Charlie. Thank you. Councilmember Reese, sorry.
Hi, Mr. Greeley. How are you today?
Good afternoon, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. Don Greeley, Department of Water Management.
I think you win the Zoom background contest for the day. That is glorious.
That's Tier Quarry.
I thought so. Very nice. I had a question about the architect that you're proposing to hire for this project. Once in the agenda memo and once in the compliance memo, it indicates that the firm is minority owned. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because that's not my understanding about DTW architecture.
Yes, that's our understanding from the Equity and Inclusion Department. We're circling back with them to confirm that. It's our understanding they're a Latino-owned business firm. So, but
okay,
they fall under the MDE. But we're circling back and making sure that that's correct, and we'll get back to you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
And I just had I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I had the item marked as I really appreciate the compliance report being included. I know that I've pressed on that a few times, and I really appreciate you including it. Thank you.
Thank you. Here's my question about this item. Why did this item come to us, Mr. Manager? Isn't this under the threshold for our approval, for your approval?
Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure about that. I'll have to defer to the staff as to what was the background on that. I didn't pick up on the difference there, so I don't know if somebody has a comment.
Well, I just don't know that we need a comment, but in general, I support your discretionary authority and just want to make that clear.
Yeah, Mayor, there was a certain trigger that I think made it go into the council agenda cycle. I'll follow up with staff what trigger that was and let you know.
Yeah, you don't need to let me know. It's okay. Don't do the extra work on my account, but just flagging that the ones that you all can do, we like you to do. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
Thank you, everybody. Any other questions on that item? If not, we'll move to item 15. This was pulled by Councilmember Freeman, and it is street and infrastructure acceptances.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really appreciate the work that our street and infrastructure team does. And I was looking at the item and just trying to understand. I noticed there were a lot of departments included, but I didn't see NIS or the Office of Equity and Inclusion included. And so I was just wondering if there was a engagement plan around all the outreach that would happen to the perimeter, I guess, property owners who would see the service members or servicemen and women out on the street, pretty much, to let them know that what was going on, how that was going to work, considering COVID and all, how the outreach was going to happen, so it wasn't just mail. And this, I just wanted to hear if there was any feedback on how you would.
Thank you.
On how that would move forward.
I'll ask the manager if he wants to respond to that.
Mr. Mayor, I would want to see if Bo or Marvin Williams could respond to that, please.
Marvin Williams, Public Works. Typically, we don't do any formal outreach to neighboring communities when we accept infrastructure in for city maintenance. It's pretty standard that a lot of these are just different phases of developments that the city already owns and maintains. So there hasn't been any type of formal plan developed to do any additional outreach. It's just part of our normal maintenance operations once we assume ownership that will incorporate them into our workflow.
And I would just add that it might be helpful to just make some of the community engagement staff aware, because then they could share that when they're doing outreach or as they're doing their update newsletters. I mean, they could be sharing this information that's coming along, because you're sharing the locations, and I'm sure they could break that out by their teams.
Yeah, we could absolutely include NIS and OEWD or any other departments on the notification process when we formally accept infrastructure. So that's not a problem at all.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on this item? All right, thank you very much. I believe we have now reached the end of our agenda, and I'll ask the manager to recommend settling the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll give you the information to settle the agenda, and I would like to come back to my one project.
My fault. Let's do that first, and then we'll settle.
You want to do that first?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, Apologies. So thank you. So, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, as you know, we have continued to plan for a variety of council meetings, during this environment, and up until now have suspended all of the public hearing items going all the way back to March. Obviously, because we couldn't meet in person, we were trying to think through what are the legal and practical requirements of gaining the thoroughness of public input for public hearings, and what's the technology requirements associated with that. So we are at a point that I think we have mostly figured that out, also, though I'm sure when we get there, there'll be a few bumps along the road, but I think we have a plan in place. So currently we have upwards of 20 public hearing land use related type items that have been held in abeyance or will likely be held in abeyance before the end of, or need to be dealt with before the end of June. The planning department would like to begin review of those or have those items considered at the June 1st city council meeting. So we have currently 2 council meetings in June, obviously June 1st, where we'll have the budget public hearing. June the 15th, we'll have the acting on the budget in both cases with the rest of the agenda items. So I don't think it's practical, by the way this will have to be structured, that we're going to be able to follow the typical process by putting many public hearing items on these agendas, or we're going to have very, very long nights. So what we have been discussing and are suggesting is that we take a few items, a few of those public hearing items at the June 1st meeting, some at the June 15th meeting, but that we also schedule 2 or 3 additional special council meetings for these public hearings. And what I wanted to talk to you about was, one, to see if that was a suitable or acceptable process for you, but 2, to get your feedback on your preferences for how they would be scheduled. Our initial thought was that we would do them during the intervening weeks of council meetings, but certainly would defer if you feel like you want to have 3 meetings in a week versus the next week have none. The other question that we have been kicking around, we wanted some feedback from the council, obviously what day of the week is a preferable day. And then if we, depending on how we do that, but also a preferable time. We do have some flexibility, quite a bit of flexibility as to how we can schedule those. But I know that many members of council are balancing a variety of challenges at home with families and business and all those kinds of things. So, we could, for example, do like we have done and start those public hearings at 7 o'clock, just acknowledging that we will likely go way into the evening, even for handling 2 or 3 of them. Or we could start earlier in the afternoon, say 4 o'clock, acknowledging that we get done earlier in the evening, but likely would have those meetings run through the dinner hour. Or we could start sometime earlier in the day and then just acknowledge that there may be some issues that some level of participation may be impacted by people who can't participate because of work requirements or those kinds of things. So that's generally what we would like to get some feedback and discussion from the council members on. The other piece that is kind of related, but I think it's something that we should just practically talk about today as well, is whether or not the council will retain the virtual meeting environment for what period of time. My suggestion, based on everything that I read and I think where we're going to be, is that we just acknowledge that we will be in the virtual environment at least through the end of June, possibly longer. But I don't feel comfortable at all that we will be in a place that we can hold full meetings and certainly public hearing type meetings in the council chambers. So that's all a variety of things that I want to talk to you about today. We can take them in any particular order, however you decide, but it's something that we do need to, start planning around, because we have notice requirements and those kinds of things. Obviously, lots of interest from the persons who have filed these petitions to have them considered in advance. And then also, I think we should be clear with the public about what expectations are for virtual or in-person meetings, at least in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. I think that what I'd like to do is take the first issue first. As I understand it, your recommendation is that we let the public know that at least through the end of June, we will be having our meetings virtually. And so I just want to hear if there are any comments from members of the council. I certainly support that, but just want to hear if there are any comments or concerns by anyone. So, Mr. Manager, I think we can take that as an affirmation that you can let the staff know and we can let the public know that that would leave us basically for the next couple of months. We will be having our meetings virtually. And then as we get into June, we'll await your further recommendation.
Great, thank you.
And then the second question is more complicated, colleagues, and about I think we've got to start these public hearings. We owe it to the people that are waiting for them and to our public. And that means we are going to have some longer meetings with more complicated processes. And you've heard the manager ask for some guidance on when we would like these special meetings in terms of time of day, and also whether we would prefer a certain day of the week, or especially whether we'd like to have the meetings in the week in which we have our other meetings, our regular meetings, or would we rather spread them out into what is traditionally our off week. So maybe I'll take those, try to make it easier for us by separating those and ask, maybe I'll use the last question first, which is, how do people feel? What are your opinions about whether or not we should have it on the off week or whether we should have it in the same week we have our council meeting and work session? Any thoughts? Councilmember Caballero?
Yeah, I just want to make sure. So right now we have a meeting on the 1st and the 15th. And then we're just trying to pick extra days and times to fit. And it's a total of 20, or there's more?
It's close to 20 and could be more depending on how many more come in the door, but it's upwards of 20.
Yeah.
And also we would have the work session on the, what is that?
Yeah, on those, right. I think
we wouldn't normally have the work session scheduled for that Thursday after the 15th meeting because that would be
done
this year,
right. I think my only thing is that Zooms are harder for whatever reason. For me, they're harder to stay on longer. So I think even if it's and everyone may have a different opinion, but it's harder. I think the first council meeting that we did virtually where we got wonderful information, but it went pretty late. It was harder than it would have been in person just because of what's happening in my house. So chunking it and I know that means more meetings, so I want to respect everyone else's times, but a 4-hour meeting is a lot harder for me virtually than like a 2-hour meeting.
Thank you. Can we hear other comments? Just to hear people's preferences.
Hi. I don't have any preferences. We'll figure it out here. I want to make sure we accommodate everybody else. Obviously, a 2-hour meeting is better than a 4-hour meeting, but I'm not sure 2-hour meetings are any better for me than 1 4-hour meeting. But I understand other people have different stuff going on. But I did want to say, before we get off of this subject entirely, I do want to talk about kind of what the staff's plan is for public comment. As some of us may have heard, the General Assembly passed a law over the weekend that set out what we're kind of how we're supposed to do it. And I just want to make sure we're on board with that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
We will definitely have that discussion once we settle the kind of when. So thank you for bringing that up, Council Member.
And we're working on that, I would say, Mr. Mayor. And I can say from the feedback that I've had discussions with the city attorney's office as well as the planning department, their proposal will far and exceed the minimal requirements that were laid out by the new legislation.
Thank you so much. Madam Attorney?
Hi, Mr. Mayor. I also wanted to add that Krista Kukaro, who is the Assistant City Attorney that works on our legislative matters, is sitting in a training as we speak, where the School of Government and some other entities are updating folks on the legislative changes that were made. And so we're going to be sending out guidance to the administration and the council as well. She's just going to kind of summarize what the new rules are, what we need to make sure we're covering as we have public hearings online.
Thank you.
In the next 3 to 5 days.
Great. Councilmember Reese, does that satisfy you for now? Thank you so much. Colleagues, other people want to comment on their preferences. Councilmember Freeman?
Thank you. I appreciate the city manager trying to move us forward with the public hearings. And I appreciate Councilmember Reese's questions about how that will work. I also have concerns. And then I also note I am still working full time. And as an essential worker, there is actually like physically like a day, like Thursdays in the mornings, I'm engaged in traffic calming measures and, you know, directing traffic so for people to pick up food. I just want to make sure that it doesn't overlap with any of the meetings or work that I'm doing. So just cognizant that it will depend on which week, because I do have alternating meetings depending on the week. So just I would just like to make sure that I'll try to move as much as I can. I don't think it'll be too much of an issue, but I do want to make a note that there is some time frames that I cannot quite alter.
Thank you. That's really important. Thank you for bringing us that. And Mr. Manager, if you could make sure you all are closely coordinating with Councilmember Freeman, that will be important.
All right, that sounds like more of a conflict for early morning schedules than maybe late afternoon or evening.
Okay. Other people want to express.
I'm sorry. And I would just say the preference is more around late afternoon. So like around 3 o'clock, I'm open. I'm a little bit more open. I don't have meetings scheduled regularly around 3 o'clock. So.
Councilmember Freeman, do you have a preference between a late afternoon and evening?
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you.
Open on that.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to say, I also have a preference for more shorter meetings rather than longer meetings, also because if my child care is my 13-year-old, I'd rather not have him doing it for 4 hours at a time. But in terms of dates and times, I'm flexible.
Thank you so much.
Would it be helpful to send it? I have 2 kids who are going to be having promotion ceremonies. I have no idea how they're doing this, if they're doing it virtually, if we're supposed to be doing a drive, whatever, but I know that it will be around the 10th or 11th of June. Should we just send some of these kind of, please don't schedule things on these dates through our admin to Tom? Would that be easier?
Yeah, you could send them to the admin or to the clerk's office so we could accumulate those.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask Councilmember Middleton, who I think is the only person who hasn't expressed a preference, if you have any preferences or concerns.
Yeah, I'll govern myself according to what my colleagues, and I'm pretty flexible. Really, Tuesday nights are really kind of blocked out for me. Other than that, I'm pretty flexible.
How are you on Sunday mornings, council member?
Not really good. Not really. I mean, I could do it, but I'll be multitasking big time.
Okay.
That I would love to see.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah, I like to see that too. Having attended church at Abundant Hope, I can tell you that it would be hard to do. Okay. So, Mr. Manager, I think we gave you a little guidance. I think that there's some preference for shorter meetings more frequently than long meetings. And I think there's a somewhat of a preference for more of the late afternoon, evening kind of schedule than a morning schedule. I think, did I fairly summarize, colleagues? Anybody have any?
And I would add, I don't know, I wanted to check with Councilmember Caballero and Mayor Pro Tem Johnson if the 3 hours would be okay, because I realize 4 is a long time, but if it's possible to do 3, I'd rather have fewer meetings to bump out people from than more frequent meetings.
So that's a good question.
Again, if there's a little bit of screaming in the background, we'll just cope with it. No one is in danger. It's just that after a couple of hours together, my kids are going to start to hate each other. But yeah, I mean, we can make it work.
All right. Thank you. Tom, do you feel like you have the guidance that?
I do. We'll go ahead and try to put together a schedule, but before we advertise it and publish it, I will run it through everybody just to make sure we don't have any major challenges. We'll try to get that done early next week. I'll get with Mr. Young and the staff and see that we can, put it together. We will still try to do a couple hearings on those nights we're already meeting. I think that we could make that work without prolonging that night too long, those nights too long. And then we'll look for some intervening nights with the goal of trying to get through them all before the end of June. That's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Colleagues, I believe we have now run through our agenda, and I'm going to ask the manager again now at the appropriate time to recommend settling the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have items for consent, items 1 and 3 through 15. The GBA item is item 16. GBA public hearing is item 17. And you disposed of item number 2.
Thank you so much. Can I have a motion that we settle the agenda per the manager's recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and second that we settle the agenda per the manager's recommendation. Could I ask a show of hands for all in favor in a way that the clerk can see our hands? Madam Clerk?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. The ayes have it. The motion passes unanimously. There being no other business to come before this meeting, I'm going to declare the meeting adjourned at 1:55 p.m. Thank you, colleagues.
Bye, everybody. Have a great weekend. Stay home. Wash your hands.